Kariki tātou, tue ki ringa, tue ki raro, tue ki roto, tue ki waho, tue tātou te tangata, ki te kaupapa o te hui nei, ki te kaupapa o te rangi nei, mauri ora kia tātou katoa. Some housekeeping. Kei te mi ki a koe, CEO Leone. Some housekeeping. And also, welcome Board Member Knowles and David Armstrong's on Zoom. Welcome Board Member Armstrong. And Councillor Butler is on Zoom as well. Some housekeeping. Some reminders about Zoom. The meeting's been recorded and will be available on Council's YouTube channel. Please keep your microphones muted if you're on Zoom. Toilets and fire exits. I'm not sure that anyone here doesn't know this. Out the doors and to the left of the wharepakus, the toilets, fire exit there. And to let you know that hearing assistance hardware is available in the public seating area should anybody require it. Thank you. Apologies. We've got an apology from Councillor Greening and from Councillor Crass. He jokes about being shell crash because he rides motorbikes, so then I confuse myself. And the Mayor for lateness, if someone's happy to move there. So apologies for Councillors Greening and Shellcrass if someone's happy to. Councillor Maru, and second. Councillor Walker, thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Against carried, thank you. We've got two speakers for public forum today, Matthias and Nick. Matthias is going to go first, is on my list to go first. It's usual to wait in the seating space, Nick, while other people are speaking their public forum, but you don't want to. It's just usual to wait in the seating area until it's your turn. Oh, yeah. Yeah, all good. It just gives the focus to Matthias then, I think. Yeah, all good. Okay, so 10 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair. To avoid any misunderstanding, I would like to make clear that my speech today is not about a specific court case or any ongoing legal proceedings. I'm well aware of the rules here and I will respect them. Instead, I would like to speak about how legal proceedings can be commenced in general as part of enforcement actions that your organization takes against people in our community. Or as it's called in your enforcement policy, the most severe response from council. And your most severe response is directly linked to the delegations register that clearly describes who can do what, which of course also includes the delegated authority to commence legal proceedings. And in your delegations register on page 46, we can read, quote, authority to apply for an enforcement order under section 316 of the Resource Management Act is delegated to the group manager, environmental assurance, quote, end. And that's what I'm speaking here in this committee today. I think it's fair to say that the application for an enforcement order in the Environment Court starts a legal proceedings because there's a statement of claim, there are parties to the case, affidavits are exchanged, and there's a judgment at the end. So it has all elements of a legal proceedings. Then if we go to page 45 in your delegations register, we can read that only in exceptional circumstances, the chief executive can commence court proceedings, and in all other instances, the ability to commence court proceeding is confined to council. That's the quote from your delegations register. Yes, the chief executive has authority in exceptional circumstances, but, quote, in all other instances, the ability to commence court proceedings is confined to the council. So the question is, if in all non-exceptional instances, the ability to commence court proceedings is confined to the council, how can it be that the group manager environmental assurance has authority to commence legal proceedings in the Environment Court. I cannot see how these two parts can both apply at the same time. And that's why I made a Legoima request, and the response was, the information that I requested does not exist within Council. That's really surprising that nobody in Council has information how that makes sense, what I just quoted from the delegations register. But at the same time, these delegations are used to take actions against people that have severe impact on them. Some of them become homeless, others have to pay tens of thousands of dollars. And just to be clear, it's not just an opinion from someone in the Legoima team. The O and the I in Legoima stand for official information. It is now an official statement by your organization that nobody in Council has the information that I requested in regards to the delegations register. But let's continue on page 53. That's the chapter about statutory delegations. And there it's written, quote, statutory appointments occur where, by virtue of being an office holder, staff have duties and powers which are additional to any delegation. In those cases, staff are acting under appointment rather than delegation. Details of these delegations appear in the appointment register, quote end. And if you look at these pages in this chapter that deal with the Resource Management Act, we can see that the Group Manager Environmental Assurance has quite a number of these so-called statutory appointments. And as I just quoted before, statutory appointments occur by virtue of being an office holder. And it raises the question for me, what's the name of the office that the Group Manager Environmental Assurance holds? Because I could not find anywhere on your website this information. That's why I made a Legoima request. What is the name of the office held by the Group Manager Environmental Assurance? Response from your Legoima team. As an officer of Council, Mr. Drummond holds a number of delegations. Okay, well, that's nice, but it was not an answer to my question. So I went back to Legoima and asked them, what's the name of the office held by the Group Manager Environmental Assurance? Please answer my question. And the Legoima response was that my request is refused because it's frivolous and vexatious. So still, I don't know what the name of your office is, Mr. Drummond. And I would like to say that these kind of responses from your Legoima team, they don't really help to create transparency and good relationship between your organization and the public. But if you look, for example, at the Wellington City Council, it's a bit different because on their website, I can read what position they have in their executive leadership team. They have a chief executive officer, a chief financial officer, a chief people and culture officer, a chief strategy and governance officer, chief operating officer, chief planning officer, chief infrastructure officer, and chief Maori officer. They are all officers. It's in their title. It's clearly visible what office these people hold. So, Madam Chair, I've got two simple questions today, and I really would like to have an answer to them. What's the name of the office held by the Group Manager Environmental Assurance? And second, why has he authority to apply for an enforcement order at the Environment Court when at the same time the ability to commence court proceeding is confined to Council? And Madam Chair, you can treat these two questions as Legoima requests because Section 10 of Legoima makes it clear that requests can be made, quote, in any form and communicated by any means, including orally. So please consider my speech today as a Legoima request. And last but not least, I would like to come back to the question that I raised in the last meeting here 6 weeks ago, I think. I asked, quote, how was it possible that we had so many enforcement actions against people living in unconsented dwellings with such a low number of search warrants, quote end. And I referenced sections in the legislation, quoted the report from the Ministry of Environment, and also talked about a court case in the High Court in Auckland that was relevant to the question. Councillor Maru even wants to have this judgment from this court case, and I provided him the PDF file on the same day. And you, Madam Chair, said in the meeting after my speech, quote, thank you for asking so specific, and the response will come to you, I am sure. These were your words, Madam Chair. And I did receive an email from Mr. Drummond. But I have to be careful. It's not criticizing anyone. I was simply not happy about this email because the only thing that was said by Mr. Drummond in this email was, quote, from my perspective, we are comfortable with Council staff use of their powers of entry under RMA and when a search warrant is required. That's all. Nothing else in his email. I cannot see how this would answer my question because my question started clearly with how was it possible? And I'm not satisfied with an answer that simply states everything is okay, nothing to look here. For me, that's not enough, especially when people's civil liberties are affected. And I personally spent more than 40 or 50 hours of research on this single topic alone to come forward with what I thought was a simple question. And that's not only me who wants an answer to this question, also the people out there affected by your enforcement actions, they also want to know. So please provide answers, because there are two beautiful words written into the Local Government Act, and they are transparency and accountability. Thank you. Any questions?
I don't imagine there's questions when you haven't, there's anything that needs to be clarified particularly. So no, that's it.
Thank you.
Nick, you have 5 minutes.
I haven't actually prepared a speech or anything today. Just thought I'd come in and, oh, sorry. I just thought I'd come in and talk to you all last week.
If you sit down, the mic will work.
Sorry.
Here you go. And if you might pull it towards you a little, then we can hear you clearly. Thank you.
Look, last week we were given some information about how council decide on what is a building and what is in fact a vehicle in relation to.
I'm just going to pause you there, Nick. So I just want to clarify that you're speaking as a member of the public or as a board member of the community board in Motueka?
Oh, whichever you like. Yeah, I'm a board member. Yeah, I'm speaking as a board member, if you like, or I don't know. Don't understand what you mean.
You don't understand what I mean?
Yeah, Nick Hughes, or I'm on the community board. Yeah, but
well, there's a difference in whether I think it's something for you to get clear about in yourself about whether you're here as a member of the public or you're here furthering the work of the board or as a board rep or. But I would say about the information, I think you're referring to the council workshop that was held.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a confidential workshop. So you need to be a little careful about how you go about this, so that you're respecting those boundaries, which is, because it's not, anyway. As a board member, you've got other avenues, haven't you, to be able to further these concerns and issues that you have. Hence my question about whether you're here as a member of the public or not.
Okay, well, I'm going to rephrase that of how and when. Okay, can I start again? Because
You can start again.
Thank
and
you.
I think it's helpful if you do declare if you're speaking as a member of the public or as a board member. And I noticed that in the past when we've had there's been the odd occasion where a councillor has said, has wanted to speak in public forum, but they don't do it as a councillor. So they set that aside and say, I'm here as a member of the public.
Yeah.
And,
well, I came in to try and speak as a community board member and I didn't get a chance to speak. And I now only have 5 minutes. I just wanted to come in and clarify a couple of things from what Tasman District Council are doing. But clearly it's starting to be a problem again, isn't it?
Well, not necessarily, but I think we just need to get clear here. So if you've got some issues coming out of the workshop and that information that was presented and you're wanting to understand that more or, understand it more or you've got some commentary about that, then there's an avenue to do that as a board member through the council and board member system, the way that we work with staff and our senior leadership team. So I'm not against you here. I'm just wanting to be very clear about boundaries because
I was here to try and help. I'm just trying to help you guys, help the Tasman District Council with their determinations and help councillors understand. That was all I was here to do.
Right.
A crucial part of that is saying, well, this is how you're doing something now. So now I can't actually explain this is how you do it now. No. So for the people listening on YouTube land and that sort of thing, they're now going to have only half the information. So that's fine. I'll leave it at that. We won't mention that.
Well, it's that I guess I'm encouraging that as a board member that you use the avenues available to you to expand on any of the workshop information or more clarification you want or commentary you might have. But this isn't the place to do that if it's a
I
confidential
will speak
workshop.
as a member of the public, but I can speak now. I wasn't going to, but I will now speak as a private person, and I will draw on my own personal experiences over the last 5 years. Then this is changing everything that I was going to say. Oh, it's all going to be rather positive too, by the way. But anyway, it's challenging. Right, so everything is now a bit different, but I will try. Okay. Oh, I just about can't speak here now because it's all thrown out the door. Okay, you have the Tasman District Council has clear definitions on page 11 of this document. It has the definitions of a motor vehicle. You also have the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment's decision tree on whether or not a vehicle is a building. These are both clear definitions. And what I have found in my experiences over the last 5 years, that these two documents, which are very important and put in to assist the councils to determine, are not being utilised. And I feel if we all get on board together, if the councils get on board with the elected people and the people that are being victim to this, we can actually change something. From all through what I have come across in the last 5 years, I think the legislation can actually assist us if we choose to use it like that. At the moment, I'm seeing that we're not utilising the information we've been given. I draw attention to the definitions as to be a building. If a unit is not fixed to land, it is not a structure. If it's not a structure, it's not a building under the Act. That is a very good interpretation. We can use this to our advantage. There's a lot of concerns as to people living in caravans on land, and suddenly the definition is clouded by other issues such as sanitary provisions. That's a separate issue and it's well covered with everything. Oh, we can't have buckets of excrement being poured onto neighbours' properties. I understand that, but it's not about that. That's a separate issue which can be taken care of at any time. If you're living in a caravan, just because you're living in a caravan, you don't need to live unhealthily. This isn't the 70s and the 80s where people historically that lived in that sort of thing were maybe not the perfect person. But nowadays, we've got a different genre of people here. For me, the people that I'm seeing that are living in tiny homes, a large amount of them are single live-alone women and mature women that don't have any other options for various reasons. I can assure you that these people are not dirty living people. You know, I've got so much information here which can just help us. It can help the Tasman District Council to work together and make it work instead of using it as a weapon. That's what I've seen happen. We need to de-weaponise this legislation, and it's easy to do. We have the definition of a vehicle, it's plain and simple, and we have a decision tree to assist us. It's been given by MBEI. Let's lose this and let's make Tasman a bit of a better place, because if we're going to stay on the track we are, there's only one way left, and that's mass evictions. Because if we're going to decide on what the rules are and we're going to enforce them, I'm afraid there's a huge amount of people in Tasman that are going to have to leave the district because they are living in things other than a 250 square metre McMansion.
You're at 4 minutes, Nick, so you got a minute.
Yeah, look, that's all I wanted to say. We've got, there it is. It's simple. It's simple. Let's use this instead of making things difficult. I've been waiting for 4 years or more for an answer to how is it fixed to land. And despite numerous attempts, it just hasn't happened except for at a meeting in Murchison, where I was told vehicles can become buildings because they're attached to land by gravity. I'm stunned by that remark. That's the sort of thing we need to change. Gravity isn't a council-controlled substance. It's just without gravity, that tree will fall out because the ground it's attached to is going to go. Let's work together now, eh? Let's put this right. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. We're going to move on to.
If I may, through you, Madam Chair, just point of clarification, Nick was quoting a piece of paper and a page number. Can we be told what the piece of paper is that you had?
No.
There you go. Going to move on to our agenda. Any declarations of interest for today? No. Any late items? No. We're going to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on Thursday, the 14th of March, 2024. There were some action points to those minutes that you might want to speak to, Kim.
Sure, and in a general sense, all the actions have been followed up on. But one of the things that we ended on at the committee meeting was the hunt for the elusive turtle in Golden Bay, and that received a little bit of follow-up coverage as folk around the country showed a bit of interest in that. I guess the report on that is that we haven't managed to find that elusive turtle just yet, but what we do have is an eastern water dragon is found in a local creek. So we haven't found the turtle, but we have found an eastern water dragon, and I think that picture is just being shown here. So that's a bit of an update, not directly related to the agenda, but that is something we have found. And on an even better news front, there has been a great spotted kiwi found in an area next to Puponga Recreation Reserve by a local conservation group. And that's actually quite a significant thing because this kiwi has been found to be 40 miles away from where it was thought to be. So it does give a bit of a signal that our biodiversity is expanding as we would hope in some of the precious areas that our community have very strong interest in. And so it's a great spotted kiwi found far from home. And it's an article that's appeared and stuff yesterday.
Thank you, and a nod to the predator work that's going on out in that quite big area. And in terms of the actions on the minutes, so they've all been addressed. We've acted on each of these. Yeah. Thank you. If someone's happy to move the minutes, be accepted. Councillor Mackenzie, and second, Councillor Ellis. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. And we're going to move to the report sections, and we'll start with Group Manager's report. Kim, thank you.
So I'd take my report as read, but it just in a sort of a broader overview that sits with it. A lot of what we're talking about in this report is the shifting ground that we're seeing in a national sense as the government moves through its coalition agreements into different phases of implementing its reform agenda. We've now moved our way through phase one, which was the quick disestablishment of some legislation that didn't suit those coalition agreements. And we're now into phase two, which is essentially about tweaking of the existing legislation to better fit the desires of the government. So we're well and truly in that phase at the moment, to an extent that it does involve the introduction of new legislation. So we had the fast track consenting bill presented to the House, and that is something in this particular report we're capturing the submission that has been put together by the staff in association with the Mayor and signed off and sent, and looking for retrospective approval. Elsewhere, though, we're still seeing in the last week since my report was struck that there's additional changes in the wings. There's been examples have note here. Certainly around the earthquake strengthening, that's been pushed out a little bit about where compliance is around that. So that's from the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Enterprise. They've made some changes there. You'll see some changes around ports and the fact that their consenting provisions are staying in play for a little longer to give some security around ports. There's been some extra information today around some of the tweaks that are happening inside the RMA. So that's starting to signal the government starting to shape up what those changes will be. And it does in fact impact on some aspects like winter grazing, those requirements, and there's quite a bit of attention given to that. And at the same time this is happening, we're also seeing some court cases through the High Court proceedings, particularly affecting Canterbury and Southland, which is starting to test the strict nature of the legislation that exists versus the flexibility that councils are trying to build into that to deal with things pragmatically, which is sort of a drive of this government. So there's sort of a bit of a sense that some of the legislation may be having a bit of a harder edge to it in full interpretation when challenged in the courts than I guess it's been interpreted in some areas, and indeed the way the government's speaking, it's looking to loosen up some of those shackles as well. So we're in a really changing environment at the moment, and I guess that reflects on the way that staff are having to be quite agile in terms of their interpretation of the status quo and what might change in the future. So my report's trying to bring together some of those moving parts for you to give you a little bit of a sense of how that's shaping up and where some of those particular interest points are in terms of the work that we do across the environmental spectrum and the regulatory spectrum across the council. Take your comments.
Thank you. Grant, are you happy to just turn that mic off that's on the desk there? Thank you. Deputy Mayor Bryant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for you, if I may ask some questions around the report of Kim. So just firstly, turning to the freshwater farm plans, I understand there was some more information released yesterday, which you may or may not be able. So what, have you any detail around what was released yesterday, firstly?
No detail. I've just come off a conference call through my Turu Kahika network where that, I guess the update is starting to be pulled together. And you'll see in my notes here that Turu Kahika has tried to front foot that discussion by coming up with a set of principles that whatever happens, those principles hold, and we feel that the freshwater farm plan system will be better off for it. So it's really an exchange of discussions at the moment between the regional sector, who are there to implement a big part of this, the Ministry for the Environment, which are basically working with their ministers to tweak the settings, and the rural sector, who are looking to see something that is actually quite enabling for them as well. So very much at the moment, there's a discussion with different parties sort of circling around the ultimate outcome. But in terms of our point of view, we see real value in establishing greater accountability and responsibility for the sector to manage its own effects. And the freshwater farm plan system is very much in that line. And also, in terms of this region, we're still very keen to see that land at the same time the changes to the national policy statement for freshwater land, so that we can give certainty with the new requirement. So there's quite a lot of discussions at the moment circling around exactly how this stuff will play out.
So have we had any indication, or are we still looking to go live with our farm freshwater plans last quarter of 25?
That's still in play for us. There needs to be an order in council to activate that. The government has not indicated any desire to when it will be putting those orders in councils in place. So their direction may be delayed, but that doesn't actually stop councils adopting this if the timing is right for councils. So our team are still thinking that that's a good landing spot for this stuff to go live.
Right. And one of the other comments I heard in relation to this yesterday was that the requirement to identify significant natural areas, SNAs, has been pushed out by 3 years. Have you any detail around that?
There's I guess it's not something that has had a legislative change. So the status quo still prevails. I think what the government is signalling there is that in the changes that will come, they may actually push out that deadline, but we're still working under the current legislation rather than that direction and working with the various landowners. I think that the Tasman approach is increasingly achieving voluntary buy-in to this, and the harder edge will come when to the point that we haven't got that last bit, and that's, I guess, what we're in the hands of the government as to when that harder edge comes into play.
Thank you. And then just turning to the fast tracking legislation you covered. What's the process from here on, and will that be heard by a select committee, and how long is that process likely to take?
I haven't got the details with me at the moment, but yes, it definitely will be heard by a select committee, and it's going to be in quite a short, constrained time frame. So it's not something that will play out to deemed to be playing out for any long period of time. I think the government is quite clear on where it wants to go in terms of the way it wants to play it out. So it's likely to be a really short process, I suspect.
Because in some ways it is somewhat controversial, and I'm not sure we got any projects that would apply, but people out in the community are concerned about if it just gives an open slather, for the want of a better word, or open checkbook that people can just front up and get their consent a lot quicker.
Yeah, and I think you'll see that is contained in the submission that we put to government, is to be very careful not to, make mistakes and have unintended consequences, while recognising that there is a need to get some impetus behind some rather critical projects across the country.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Maru, and then Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Kim, just in relation to 3.9 and reducing RMA barriers to delivering of land for housing, was there also discussions in that regional sector meeting about reducing barriers for using existing land for multiple dwellings, i.e. what we've heard in terms of tiny homes and bits and pieces? So is it wider than just big land for intensification, but actually also barriers for using existing land for multiple dwellings?
I think, well, obviously there's a little bit of water to go under the bridge yet before this actually comes into a confirmed position, but the early discussions are on the former, not the latter. I'm not aware of any of the discussions in that latter space, but you will be aware potentially of an article, perhaps 2 or 3 days old, where a particular situation in Auckland is being highlighted in the national media, where someone has found themselves not able to get their second dwelling consented and has preferred to stay outside of the regulatory framework. And that is now getting, I guess, that sort of attention may well mean that it comes into the wider, the settings of the reform proposals.
Thanks, Councillor Butler.
Thank you. Thanks through you, Madam Chair. Thanks for your report, Kim, and I'd like to just say that appreciation for the comprehensive submission that went on the fast track consenting bill. So my question, and I don't actually expect that we've got an answer to this, but the gold mining or gold prospecting project at Sam Creek, which is up the Cobb, which some people may know about. My understanding is that it has actually is actually on the list, or they have been asked to apply for fast track consenting. So this project, which is owned by a consortium, that has been prospecting going on there for decades, but recently there has been a large drilling rig on the Cobb Road beside the Cobb River. So my question is, do we think that this fast track consenting bill may affect the power of the water conservation order if there is contamination of the Tākaka River due to this prospecting, or should this project go ahead? Will the water conservation order hold its strength? And also, what is the status of the consents around prospecting activities? Because this drilling rig, which has appeared, large one, appeared on the Cobb Road, is actually a new development I don't expect that we can have answers today, but it's just raising this issue which is coming out of this fast track consenting bill. Just be interested in your comments.
Thank you, Councillor. Some of the specific answers to that, I think we'll need to get back to you in terms of the status of the exploratory drilling versus a future drilling program. I think there is potential in the fast track consenting bill for that project to be within the parameters they're talking about. Obviously, ministers at the moment have invited applications, and so there's no decisions made as to which of those projects will be listed in the schedule, but there's now an open invitation to a number of parties to submit their suggestions. So that's working its way through the government's process. And how this lands, in what form it lands, whether it's a fast track consent, whether it's a call-in consent, whether it's a locally processed consent, for that should the Sam's Creek people continue and decide to lodge an application, that's all in front of us. But I guess the sensitivity around the water conservation order is understood. I know the Golden Bay Community Board are very keen to stay informed as these things develop, and we're looking to keep them as informed as we can on that matter. But it's certainly going to be something that's going to have to have some careful consideration, because how that consenting regime collides and interacts with the water conservation order is something that is quite intricate, I think.
Yes, thank you. I would agree with that, and I think that it would be, we need to just keep our eye on the ball over there.
Thank you. Are you happy to move the resolution? We're receiving the group manager's report and we're respectively approving the submission.
Yes, happy to move.
Thank you. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you very much, through the chair. I guess I sit here and, it's an interesting time in local government, because we have a great degree of, a broadly changing legislative framework that we're operating under with the previous government and this government. Whether it be Three Waters or RMA reform. So I'm just wondering, I'm interested to understand and get an assurance about how the council operates internally across teams to make sure that, if something is changing here, let's say, for example, the RMA framework, and Kim, you're all over that and part of your group in Wellington, etc. How do I get a level of assurance to make sure that all of that understanding and knowledge, is shared, for example, with the planning team? So I've got a little bit of a pet thing around not wanting to do rework, because I think, over the past X number of years, we've already seen enough of that. So how do I get that level of assurance that we're all closely connected and understanding impacts on each other's work programs?
I'll give it a go. So you talk about the role that I have at the Resource Managers Group, which is a key part of Te Reo Kahaka. But the Resource Managers Group supports a whole lot of special interest groups, and that's where the grunt is done. So these special interest groups bring the experts and councils across the country together in a policy construct, in a consenting construct, in a river engineering construct, in an enforcement construct, to have those discussions. And then that all connects up, and Te Reo Kahaka has appointed 2 or 3 what they call directors, who pull out of the experts the connected up game plan that the regional sector wants to see put in play, and then advocates for that with central government colleagues. So that's the sort of the staff mix. It comes together for us through our chief executives. So our chief executives have a regional chief executive come together, where our job is to make sure our chief executives are supported and understand these moving parts and connections. The next critical meeting for that is in early May. So our big job will be through our Te Reo Kahaka directors, drawing out all of the moving parts. What does it look like? What does good look like? Taking that forward. And then the various advocates, such as myself, to make sure that our chief executive is fully tooled up for that discussion. So many ways of bringing that together, but the key need to bring it together, I think that is the accepted challenge. It's not easy in this environment because it's fast moving, and some of the ministerial, directions given to their officials are not necessarily anticipated. So this is where I reinforce the words around agility and adaptability, because sometimes the scene can change pretty quickly. But the Turu Kahika structure gives us a means of actually following the traffic and getting into that position that I think you would like us to have, which is a connected up view of how all the moving parts fit together.
I appreciate that, and it's it's great that you're connected and in there. So I'll just I'll wait and see how we go. But I just don't think our ratepayers, I don't think they deserve to be having to fund programs of work that are going in this direction, and then suddenly it changes and we're having to develop a program of work going in that direction. Now, it's not a fault of the council by any means. That's just kind of, how we seem to have landed this country, but it's costly.
Taxpayers too, yeah. Thank you. Are you happy to second the resolution? Any other questions or comments? I'd just like to emphasise too that I think it's a really good submission that we've put in, and it's considered, it's direct. I think it'll be comforting for those who've got significant concerns about the great holes in the sort of, that are yet to be filled around this idea. It'll give some comfort. There are people raising those questions, and particularly around resourcing. If you've got a consenting authority issuing consents, it's not us, but for our district, and then we're going to deal with compliance and monitoring and whatever else we're going to be doing, and how that all gets mapped out. There's a lot of questions in this still, and I don't know. Wait and see, I suppose. I'm going to put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. And Trevor, Blair and Kerry, we're moving to an annual update on Jobs for Nature, Wetlands and Fish Passage projects.
And councillors. First up, I'd like to introduce our fine project managers for the Jobs for Nature, Wetlands and Fish Passage projects, Blair Reid and Kerry South. And as always, we take our reports as read, but I'd like to emphasise a couple of things. How we are really delivering value for money, both money from the government and money that council put up to this. We are innovating, streamlining, finding opportunities, grasping those, and managing the risks in this project. This report speaks to our strategic priority of creating healthy and sustainable natural environments. We're really getting in our stride with this. We are re-wetting and doing pest control on more wetlands than we've at a rate that we've not ever seen before. We're opening up fish passage at also rates that we've never seen before. We have had some concerns from our community. Much of this is perception about this sort of work in enhancing the environment when we're in a cost of living crisis. But as someone responsible for the oversight of these projects, I'm very, very pleased with the efficiency, the output, the outcomes of these projects, and particularly pleased with how we have grown in the space of partnering with iwi. It has taken time, but we've really developed some really beautiful and productive relationships. So now over to Blair and Kerry.
Kia ora, Trevor. Kia ora, Madam Chair, and the rest of the committee. So just a very brief project snapshot from us today to give you a bit of background where we're at. So as you can read, how did the project kick off? Well, TDC and Friends came up with $1.4 million and managed to leverage $3 million out of MFE for that. So what I want to demonstrate today is why we think this is a legacy project. And I don't just mean a legacy in terms of the ecological outcomes that we're achieving, but also in terms of what it means for our district. So we've got a $4.4 million injection into our economy, into our restoration industry in the district. And of that 1.4 million that TDC and Friends came up with, only 241,000 of that has come from rates. And that's spread over 5 years. So it really is a golden opportunity for us. So just to delve into the remainder, if only 241,000 came from rates, where did the rest come from? Well, sorry, Trini, you might have to do that for me. Yeah, there we go. So yes, the in-kind contribution, the remainder. So some of it came from our partner organisations, but the project's also able to recognise the input the landowners are making. So this is the Riley family at Motopipi, and they've retired the gully system that you can see there and turned it back into wetland. So the project's able to recognise the value of that land. So for the Rileys, that's $26,000 straight on to the project. It's not including any time they're doing fencing and maintaining or planting or all the rest of it. And go back one, yep. So another example, the Porter property in the Mutiri, slightly bigger site, they've contributed $52,000. So you can see how this was all built up in order to get that 1.4 million. I try, there we go. So what did we spend it on? Well, there's three key aspects to the project. The iwi partnership that Trevor mentioned, we won't delve into today. It really deserves time on its own. It's been absolutely spectacular success for the project. You can see Bronwyn Billins here, who you might know. Yep. So this is work we supported at the Pāhara Kiki and Plains Forward. We managed to introduce this into the project to capture our combined aspirations. On the top left, we can see Digsy working at the Motopipi site. We're going to build 7 constructed wetlands. We've done 6 already. And the bottom slide illustrates the 40 natural wetlands that we have in the project, and we'll do at least 40. Most of it's weed control. This is Black Valley wetland with a silver birch that shouldn't be there. And there is a bit of planting and fencing and things that is also going on in those spaces. So 2 examples for you. One around bang for buck, and one's going to be around how we're doing weed control. So this is the Matakitaki Lodge bog in the Tūtaki. Johanna and Philip have about 2,000 to 3,000 silver birch trees that are spreading through this wetland. You might see a bit of a theme here with silver birch. And they're really stoked that we're able to come in and support them control these silver birch that are going to take over that wetland in time. But when we were there, they said to us, one of the real problems we're having at the moment is magpies scaring the stock when we're mustering. What can you tell us about the magpies they had at the show? And so we said, well, yep, they're the magpies that the biosecurity team have, they're the call birds. But rather than just say, oh, call council and ask to speak to them, we thought, well, what about if we help facilitate that? What if I get the weed contractor who's coming down here in the next couple of weeks to bring the birds down with them? And so they said, yep, that'd be great. I had a yarn to our biosecurity officer, Lindsay Barber, who you may know. He said, yep, great idea. So for about an hour of Lindsay's time and an hour of my contractor's time and 2 rolls of dog tucker for the magpies, we've managed to demonstrate to our landowners that we're not just a big lumbering beast that's all bureaucratic. We're listening to what they want. We're able to pivot the project in a way that can support what they really need. And off the back of that, I can also tell MFE, well, we've done an extra 80 hectares of pest animal control, and it cost us about $100. So second example, this is Steve and Sarah Parker's property on the left and Doc on the right, known as the Sananad wetland. Steve and Sarah have got about 50,000 silver birch trees that you can see there, and they've been battling those for about a decade or so. And you can appreciate that 50,000 trees is a lot of weekends for somebody to try and control. They're just not going to do it. They're going backwards. So it's really awesome for us to be able to come in, and you can see what they look like on the left when they're healthy and on the right when they're not so healthy. And it's giving the native vegetation a chance to come back. just looking at the dot portion on the right, they thought they had the rowan under control in the manuka. Anytime a rowan poked its head up out of the manuka, they'd knock it on the head. But they haven't got drones. And we're able to fly it for them and map it and drill down and have a look. And anywhere there's a blue dot is a rowan tree. And anywhere there's a blue polygon, there's too many rowan trees to put a dot on. So they were pretty shocked when we shared this with them. But knowledge is power, right? And so together we've come up with a bit of a plan where we'll come in and give it a lot of horsepower for the next 2 years, 2.5 years we've got left in the project, get it down to a manageable level where they can deal with it. So, well, this is going to be a bit tricky. Can we hit play on that at all? There's about 15 photos in there. I just want to run through. Anyway, if we can't, we can't. What I want to demonstrate with this is who we spent it on. And this is coming back to what I was talking about being a golden opportunity. There are about 50 small to medium enterprises that we've supported through the project over the last 2.5 years. It's $1 million that we've spent with them. And we're targeting these small to medium enterprises because they're locals. They're in the districts that we're working in. They're invested. They've got skin in the game because they live there. It's also got lower establishment costs for us, so we're getting more bang for our buck. Around about half these 50 SMEs have got less than 5 staff. So in conclusion, if we go back to where I started with the Rileys at Motopippi, for around about $2 per ratepayer per year, you can see the sort of legacy that we can achieve through a project like this. 2 years difference that you can see there. You can imagine what that's going to be like in 22 years or 222 years. Kia ora. Hand over to you, Kerry.
Thank you.
Morning. So I'm the project manager for the Fish Passage Shops for Nature project. I spend a couple of days a week on this project and another day a week supporting the Wetlands project with Blair. And
it's the same presentation.
Oh, it's the same presentation. Sorry, we just had. Yeah, apologies. We tried to keep it tight. I just have a few slides because we're kind of sized our time according to the project size. Okay, so just wanted to flag in the photo here, we have a couple of our field team from Kamano Environmental who have the contract for the assessment and remediation work being carried out by this project. Rianne and Ellie are sitting in front of a remediated culvert, a round culvert, which is the most common in-stream structure that they tend to deal with within this project. It has rubber, has muscle rope, and a rubber ramp on the downstream edge of the culvert and flexible baffles installed in the center. And that's to create pools and reduce velocity for fish. So all these materials are used for fish to help fish be able to pass through a structure. And that is the most common kind of remediation that we use in the project. So that's quick, it's simple, and it's cost effective. And that is the, what remediation methods are in scope of this project. Anything that requires a lot more time or expense or complexity is not something that the project is doing. But I'm just going to go on talk about a few of the highlights from what's in the written report. One of the things that we have really had a big focus on from the inception of the project is really wanting to go out and not only help connect our waterways for the benefit of fish, but to support landowners with some of the work that's required to help look after our environment. And so this project is primarily focused on looking at privately owned structures. And we recognized that we had the biggest risk of the project was really around getting landowners on board, having them allow the supplier to come onto their property, assess the structures and remediate structures. And I'm really pleased to say that, nearly 3 years into this project now, we've had participation rates of 93 to 95%. So in in the map there on the slide, I've got a little snippet of the Golden Bay area, and all those dots are in-stream structures that have been assessed. The suppliers actually been working all the way through the entire region, so this is just one snap. They're almost done with the Golden Bay area, and they're spending a bit of time at the moment in St. Arnaud. So that landowner support has allowed them to assess 4,500 structures in just under 2.5 years is actually of the work. Even the project's been running 3 years, about 2.5 years of field time. They've remediated 776 structures. And they've spent 8,000 hours out in our region talking with landowners about why fish passage is important, helping them learn sometimes about fish in our region. A lot of landowners don't necessarily know a lot about our native fish. They don't necessarily know that they need to move up and downstream to complete their life cycles. And sometimes they're even quite surprised about what is found in their local waterways. They might say, oh, I've not seen any fish, or I've only seen eels. And sometimes with the support of our supplier that's out there visiting and sharing information with them, they've learned interesting things. So all of those things help raise awareness about why this work is important and what we're trying to do to support our native fish. This project isn't able to do all the things that we need to do in terms of fish passage in our region. As I mentioned, it's not doing the more complex, more expensive or replacement of structures. But what it is doing is it's taking 4,500 structures to date, and it's narrowing it right down in terms of only 179 of those have been identified for further investigation and may require a more expensive remediation or replacement. And the information that we're taking through the project actually means that we have all the data we need to cost out and make a plan for that work, and hopefully help make it easier to put into future work plans or budgets wherever the work's going to take place outside this project. We're also capturing and mapping the privately owned structure information that wasn't previously known, which is really helpful when it comes to our fish passage action plans for our region, because we need to know how many structures we have out in our region total, and we need to know what the status of those structures are in terms of passability for fish. So quite a lot of data being contributed to that regional picture. Let's see, and also this will help feed into some of the work that needs to happen around prioritization as well. And I won't talk too much about the rest of what's on that slide. It's a little bit wordy, but I just wanted to kind of allude to the fact that this funding has really given us a big significant step forward in terms of our capacity and our maturity around fish passage. And we've had some really great opportunities. For example, some of the evaluation work that's taken place on the remediation methodology that's being used by the project. We've been able to do quite a bit of work that wouldn't have otherwise been possible. And we've recently published a report about that that does back the use of it in the project. And then we've also been able to put on quite a number of training opportunities, not just for the suppliers involved in the project, but we've kind of been able to double use them and invite other contractors like planners and those that work on roading maintenance in the region to help get a better understanding about fish passage and their role. So I'll leave it there, but if anybody has any questions, really happy to answer them.
Thank you both very much. We love good news stories here. Any questions or comments? Councillor Kinnemont.
Thank you, Trevor and the team. That's well done. Very pleasing, your presentation, to hear the positivity, that it's infectious. Keep up the bloody good work. I really enjoy getting the report. I've really got a question for Blair, and it goes back to the slide there about Dock in St. Arnaud. You've done some work for Dock. Is that work invoiced, or is it in kind, or can you barter?
A bit of both. So we're pretty agnostic around land ownership, and we recognise that a number of wetlands that Dock have, they don't have the resources to manage effectively. So just like we've worked on private property, we've also worked on public property. So what we tend to do is try and sit down with Dock and work out who's got the best resources to achieve the best bang for buck. And a lot of times it's they're the experts in terms of the ecology and the wetlands. But for some stuff like the drones, for example, we're actually pretty cutting edge in what we're doing. So it really is a good partnership. Yeah.
Thanks, Blair.
Councillor Mackenzie and then Councillor Dowell.
Thank you very much through the chair. Yeah, it's not very often you read a council report that actually just makes you feel good. So it's nice to get one of those. Thank you. My first question is quite sort of specific, and it's where does Silver Birch sit in terms of our biosecurity plan?
So it is not a managed species at present. We have requested that it gets looked at in terms of the PRMP. The current status, as I understand it, obviously we need to talk to Gwynnie really to get the detail, but as I understand it, it's on a long list of weeds, and the resources just aren't there at present to elevate it into a managed status.
Okay, thank you. So I guess my question is about, there's been a lot of articles in the media about the Jobs for Nature program across New Zealand, and particularly we know that some of those programs of work are coming to an end 30th of June this year, next year, whatever. It's all going to come to a grinding halt. Sooner, this program's going to come to a grinding halt. So what are you doing in the program to ensure that, particularly around weed control with the silver birches, that you're locking in those gains forever and a day? Because, unless there's a magic wand, we're not going to be able to go back and do it again. We're not going to be able to go back to the sites and, do minor weed control around, waterways. I get, the private landowners can possibly do that, but it's more the landscape scale stuff. How are you locking in the gains?
Yeah, very good question. I guess initially credit needs to go to those that set the project up, Trevor and the team, and that they did for the maximum they could. So it's a 5-year project. We've got 2.5 years left to continue. We're halfway through. The short answer is, I guess, when the site selection was done, it was one of the key factors to accepting a site into the project was its feasibility, whether we could get it to a point where the weed problem can be managed. And there's some really good examples of significant wetlands in the district that we would love to work at, but we don't have the ability to get the weeds to a level that can be controlled. So we were quite selective in that way. The goal for these remaining sites, the sites that have been selected, is to get them down to a level where they can be managed either by the landowner or by other organisations. For example, the Mangaraku wetland over on Te Taitapu, Whanganui Inlet, that site's got a really engaged community and volunteer network. And so we're supporting the work that they're doing. Give them some horsepower for 5 years to get the weed problem down, and then they can continue it from there.
This project also is connected with the Kotahitanga Multitayo Alliance and their plan, and so we are talking about the life beyond these projects in that landscape sense, but through that body.
So what's the life of a silver birch seed in the ground?
Yeah, it's difficult. I don't have that off the top of my head, but it can be an extensive period of time. I need to understand. Some of them, like Rowan's, not so bad. It's only a couple of years. You sort of get down around 75% survivability of seed after such a short time. But I think silver birch is going to be one of those weeds where we look back and go, why didn't we hit it when we could have? And so doing what we can now to get it to a manageable level is really key.
There are some big seed trees in the village that we're pretty sure they're coming from. So that would be good to control. But so it's a lot of work with the community to, they won't be happy, obviously, and so to do it carefully and politely.
Oh, I've got about 7 big ones on my property. I'm desperate to get them down if you'd like to pop up.
Well, we did actually reach out in Newsline to landowners in the village and say that we would support them with the removal of their trees and replace them with alternatives if they're interested. So in some places we've worked with arborists to do the work for people that aren't able to remove them themselves. So we absolutely will talk to landowners and look for solutions.
Thank you. Councillor Dowler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A good news story. I will say that I quite like the meat pie control. We used to do that when I was a 9-year-old living on a farm in mid Canterbury. It was called a 22, especially at lambing time, because I used to give the lamb's eyes absolute death with their beaks. So we didn't hesitate; they were gone. Had a phone call this morning from an ratepayer who follows the council fairly strongly now, and the concern was, well, not a concern, but the question I was asked to ask was, when you go looking at wetlands or droning or going look at fish passages, what's your process of notifying the landowners so that they know what's going on?
We started out reaching out to landowners as soon as we had the finalised list. So most of the time, landowners had at least 6 months' notice of us coming. Usually done through phone calls. We do have to work with what we've got on the system. Sometimes I hit the right pages to find their contact details. But typically, always at least a phone call. Some prefer to do it by email, but certainly drone flight in particular we're really careful with because some landowners are uncomfortable with it. And so we're really careful to always get permission before we do that. Yep.
Well, I need to know. Thank you very much.
Are you happy to move the report? Be received?
Certainly am. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
If I may, through you, Madam Chair, the comment I'd like to make, this is the last ENR committee that I'll come along as the departing GM for IS&T. It's really encouraging to see how well you engage as councillors with the guys from the team. They certainly get a big kick out of the attention that you give them. And I just alert you to the fact that Trevor has got a trip down to Bort Creek after this. I think it's really important if you can get down there to see the work that we're doing. It's the closest place to us here. As we go through the next lot of LTP in 2027, we don't suspect we'll have the same access to government funding. And it's really important that councillors understand the work that we do and what it costs for us to make the changes that we're making in our environment, which will persist long after we are gone and long after we leave this place. So I urge you to attend if you can.
Thank you. Looking for a seconder for the report. Councillor McKenzie, thank you. It's pretty gratifying, isn't it, to see actual progress on the actual ground. And I imagine for those landowners that are benefiting personally, it benefits the whole shebang, doesn't it? But it's a great contribution that people are receiving that I'm sure gives them a lift in terms of continuing on or on to the next thing. So very well done. Fantastic news. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much.
I think it's on the council as well.
And we'll go to the regulatory manager 6-monthly report. Shane? Kim has a few words, I think.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, councillors might recall that at the last group managers report, we introduced the fact that we had 2 new members of the leadership team for the Environmental Assurance Group had joined us. Shane is one of those, and the other one is also here today. But I think you've met Peter before, but you haven't met Shane. So at the time, Shane was seeing his daughter down into marriage, the other side of the world, when I had that last report, but he's now back now. He's firmly got his feet under the table, and he's come to us from Christchurch City Council, and he's presenting today the first first of his reports where you'll see him on a regular basis on a sort of a 6-month rotation, but it'll also be available for these committee meetings to deal with the more spicy regulatory issues as they're unfolding. So that's part of Shane's gig, but I'll hand over to him now to introduce his report.
Welcome.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. Thank you, Kim, for the introduction. Kia ora, councillors. I'd like to introduce Tracy Waddington. She's the Acting Environmental Health Manager, just to help answer any questions you may have around the environmental health space. I take it that the report has been read and accepted. And as Kim had made mention, we've had some key personnel changes over the last 6 months. We've also had the embedding of the realignment that the regulatory unit went through, and a couple of other changes included, as Kim had mentioned, the reporting line of the Harbourmaster is now directly with Kim. And we've also established a new team leader regulatory support. And we've gone through the recruitment for that position. And we've also made an offer to a successful applicant who's now accepted the position. And that we're hoping to see some great efficiencies coming out of that position being established, taken on quite a lot of the administration work for the other parts of the regulatory team, compliance teams, and freeing the staff to do more what we're employing them to do and to be out there doing what they need to do. There's been some ups and downs in our workloads, and that is something that is expected over the volatile period that we've gone through with the Christmas period, where we saw a spike in freedom camping numbers with the new act coming into effect. More people are starting to travel and exploring our beautiful area. Dog registration numbers have also increased, and we're attributing that to an increase in people coming into the region as well. We've continued to maintain our food premise verifications, which is always good. And noise-related complaints we've seen a decrease in that. Not significant enough to really pat ourselves on the back just yet, but enough to say that the direction that we focus in our enforcement and education is starting to pay some dividends. Health licensing numbers are slightly lower, and again, the biggest attribute there to that is the food control plans that we have. We've seen a significant drop in that. We also had a hearing in November of the District Licensing Committee that declined an application for an off license at the Hotel Motueka. One of the biggest highlights for me when I took up the position was the Tākika fire. And that was quite significant for our unit. It involved environmental health officers assisting our partners and other stakeholders. And we had some staff on the ground on site because we were concerned about the contamination to the waterways and also to the borehole water. And we also had staff coordinating from the office. The concern at the time was for the immediate public health that was posed by unknown hazardous substance that was involved. In addition to the public health risk, as I might mention, there was also concerns around the environmental impacts with the water flowing into the estuary and the rivers. We also identified several houses in the Tākika area that could have had their drinking water contaminated by the runoff, and we undertook drinking water samples. All the samples that came back except 3 were compliant with the drinking water samples, and we also did more samples later as more concern was raised. And all in all, we did about 3 sets of tests around there. Our media team also proved hugely valuable in getting the messages out to the public. And After 4 weeks of testing, we got the results we were hoping for. There were no exceedance, and all 9 samples had a had a detection level that was acceptable. We also looked at our operation, how we dealt with the situation, and we had a debrief with Fire and WorkSafe and also Health New Zealand, because there were some lessons that were learned, one being activation at the right time. And we've now got a good working relationship with those organisations to ensure that we are ready. Our food safety is with regards to the quality management system that was implemented by MPI, we've put that on hold because we didn't see the financial gain or value for council and the ratepayers with us doing that. But 38 of the 67 New Zealand councils that have accreditation in that space have sorry, there's only 38 out of 67 councils now doing the accreditation, which is down from previous figures. We also, in the last 6 months, we're looking at the prosecution of a premise owner in Collingwood for failing to register a food control plan, and this is currently being progressed through the court. Obviously, we're looking at our enforcement model and taking the right action to address the breach. On the table there, we can see that our alcohol license numbers have increased, predominantly around the issue of manager certificates. That's just pushed those numbers up there. But otherwise, everything is basically still relevant to the comparable periods. Health licensing too. There's been a big drop in the number of the food control plans, as I made mention earlier. And our numbers seem consistent with previous years too around the other parts of the licensing period. Noise control, a slight drop there. And that is attributed to the party and music area. Again, we have education and we have staff going out there and educating where possible. And yeah, we're trying to do the best we can in those situations. Campgrounds, we undertook 21 campground inspections and all had a satisfactory outcome. We also took water sampling of a private drinking water supply at all the campgrounds, and the results came back favourable, where we were found to have less than 1 E. coli per 100 millilitres and complied with the maximum acceptable values as set out by the New Zealand drinking water standards. Dog control, we identified 105 more dogs that have been registered in the district, and this represents a slight increase of 0.68% over the previous period. We've also done targeted enforcement to keep the numbers of unregistered dogs low. We have noticed that there has been a number of dangerous and menacing dogs, and these numbers have increased. And this could be as a result of more dogs coming into the region, but also more closer to the urban environments with more people coming living into our urban areas. Enforcement, we've issued 139 infringement notices for dog-related matters, and these are outlined in the table below. Again, the majority was for failing to register a dog, and which supports our targeted approach to try and drive home the message that the dogs need to be registered so that we know where they are. There have been no prosecutions for any offences against the Dog Control Act during this reporting period. However, one owner was disqualified due to a conviction under the Animal Welfare Act. We rehomed 4 dogs through our dog welfare partners. And over the reporting period, we received 211 barking complaints. And again, a lot of this comes from recidivist complainants, the same people complaining about dogs. So we do respond to them and we do take action where it's warranted. Wandering stock, we had 45 occasions where the stock was removed from the road, and our contractor have a good relationship with a number of farmers, which just helps bring home that same message also to get the stock off the roads and resolving the issues. We've had no increase in illegal dumping, and we do use some camera surveillance on the public lands to identify any would-be dumpers. Over the period, we only issued 4 infringement notices for dumped waste on the public land, which is the same as the period previous in 2023. Parking enforcement. Income from parking has remained steady. Again, lower numbers for parking infringements been issued, but a higher compliance level of both recovering funds, fines, infringement fees, and also on the road. We've noticed that. Freedom camping. As I made mention earlier on, the numbers of freedom campers have been increasing steadily, and it's moving towards the pre-pandemic levels before COVID. We've also maintained our regular patrols and reacted to complaints that we received. We're also noticing an increase in homeless people in some areas, and especially in the Motueka area. And our contractors are informed on and trained on how to dealing with homeless people, how to identify what is homeless versus a freedom camper, and also to put them into contact with the right agencies to offer assistance. You'll notice that there's quite a big number in the freedom camping stats. 35 infringement notices were issued compared to 18 in the previous year, and then 75 complaints also received. And in conclusion, the team has continued to carry out its functions over the 6-monthly period. We're providing support for the review of the dog control bylaw, the public places bylaw, and the navigation safety bylaw. And there's also been a number of challenging customers and complex investigations during this period, which saw a considerable amount of time being spent on responding to a high number of Lagoima requests, recidivist complainants, parking infringement disputes, and investigating dog attacks. Despite all these issues, our staff continued to provide an exceptional service by responding to the community concerns first and foremost. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. We have some questions or maybe some comments from Councillor Maru, Councillor Walker, and then Councillor Kinnemont, and then Councillor Butler too. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Shane. Firstly, from a ratepayer that tells me what's right and what's wrong with council often, this morning you told me he really appreciated getting your phone number and the invitation to ring him anytime. So thank you for that. That's certainly a cultural change. And that might mean that Councillor Dowler, Councillor Walker and I don't get as many phone calls. So thank you. I want to drill a little bit into, probably no surprise, freedom camping. So Motueka absolutely increased in numbers. It's been there for ages, but more so in terms of the process around homelessness, because we have got, and the link with agency, because I'm not sure anything's happening in that. Is there a link? What's the arrangement with external agencies for people that are homeless in their vehicles in Motueka?
Thank you, Councillor. Firstly, when we get the complaint, we will go out and we will ascertain if the person is homeless or if it's just a freedom camper. Gathering the evidence would include looking inside the vehicle, speaking to the person, and when we look inside the vehicle, we would be able to see that the person has quite a lot of clothing, pots, pans, etc. that is just lumped on the back seat. We would interview them, and if they are open to accepting any further help, then we would look at the welfare agencies that we could put them in contact with. That would be our primary first response.
And what happens if they don't want help with the agencies, or they've already attempted to engage with those agencies and don't have a relationship with those agencies? So I take it we're talking government agencies. And there's one I think of, I think the car is impounded currently. So what happens? Because they're still homeless, but now they're homeless without a car. From a council perspective, I'm just wondering, so where do we stop? We investigate, we infringe, we refer. Is that where we stop, or do we keep part of this longer? I think I'm saying we stop.
No.
Okay. And then the second part has compliance changed on the regular nightly patrolling of Beach Reserve and Deep Reserve, because I think there was probably a two-tone it down from council, and the numbers are high again. Has there been any change in practice with the new law, or are we still just monitoring and not moving people that might not have the right sticker, or might have a blue sticker and no certificate? What's our current practice for our contractor monitoring the Motueka sites?
We follow the law, councillor. The new act states that you've got to have a self-contained vehicle to Freedom Camp, and if they're not, then we would take the appropriate action by issuing an infringement notice. Some areas, if they have to be moved on, then I'm sure I speak under correction. I don't have the evidence, but the instruction to the contractor is that they would have to move them on.
Just one last one, if I may, Madam Chair. I haven't read the new changes to the Act, but has the Act had leniency in terms of recertification dates, and is there time lapse, or is it immediate, the new rules?
No, there is a phasing period.
And again, thank you for keeping one of our ratepayers in Motueka. I'm very interested in your department.
Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you through Madam Chair. Kia ora, nice to meet you. Yeah, I too have had that phone call from said ratepayer, and it is wonderful to know that he has your direct phone number. I too want to raise my concerns around the homelessness, and I know that the predecessor of your position basically said what you've just said, but I am increasingly concerned around the number of people who are appearing in our community, who are living incredibly rough, and is going to become colder, and those challenges are going to get more. And what does that mean to us as councillors who have social consciences, knowing that yes, we may look in a window and we may see pots and pans and we may see clothing, just quietly, my car might look like that today as well. Is that really an indicator of somebody living rough, or is that an indicator of I don't have a choice but to live like this? Or am I a freedom camper and I'm choosing to be in this position? And I guess there's a fine line between what is our role and what is MSD's role. But how do we work collaboratively so that this problem doesn't continue to bleed out further? That's one of my questions, is around looking in a window. I'm not so convinced you would get the true picture of somebody's hikoi, their journey. I guess my other question is around freedom camping, and that the numbers are increasing incredibly fast. And I mean, the report says that we're close to pre-COVID. I think it won't be long and it will be post those. And as a community, we had someone come to community board and we were talking about the amount of rubbish, for example, at Dex Reserve. And do we continue to put bins to cater for the rubbish? I think the big picture with the freedom camping is, do we have the facilities to continue to allow that to grow? And at what cost to our environment does that come at? And my last thing is, with the increasing dog numbers, you may or may not be aware with the dog bylaw coming up to be reviewed, that there is a big push and a very strong voice coming through regarding dog parks. So just a heads up that that's on the radar.
Yes. Did you get all of those, Shane?
Yes, I did. And thank you, councillor. And probably just, I'm looking through the window, that was a very, very small window, excuse the pun, to explain it. Obviously, there'd be a lot of more evidence gathering. We would obviously interview the person. We'd look if they have any bills, etc. And we would be able to identify whether someone is rough sleeping. I also support your thoughts and the community's support around working better in finding a solution to that. And my pledge going forward is that I'll work with the MST and partners to try and get them to also be more helpful in that space. So that is my pledge to the community and to this council.
And through the chair, if I just pick up on that discussion, you'll appreciate, councillor, that it's a challenging situation for our officers to deal with the problem of homelessness in this region. It goes beyond the mandate that they carry, and indeed it goes beyond the contractual terms under which we've got these folk, being the eyes and ears for us out across our community. Yes, I guess it is well known that it's a growing problem, and it's a problem that needs to be addressed. But there's limited opportunity for council staff to step into that space and look to try and manage it. The point from Councillor Maru was about what does this process look like once we've referred. I think that's something that we can get a little bit of clarification around from our partners and bring that back to you. But really, there's a limited capacity within the terms that we're operating under to do more than recognise the difference between a homeless person and a freedom camper, and that's the lie of the land for us.
I mean, I guess if we're thinking there is a real concern about this isn't getting transferred in terms of referral well enough, or that joining up could happen more strongly, maybe we need to have something where we are meeting with the agencies and having a actual formalised get together about how to manage. Are there things we could do differently? Is it working in terms of referral? Anyway, I don't know where that sits. Yes, I've been looking at you, Leonie. I think you might have something to say.
You're looking at me. Look, this is a really complex problem. Some councils have a homelessness strategy where they work with agencies and they meet and look at how they refer people on. So they find someone in that situation, rough sleeping, or clearly, homeless. They can then refer those people to agencies. Some of these people don't want to be referred to agencies, in my experience, in the regulatory space. Is that some people just don't want any intervention at all. I've seen people being housed which didn't want to be housed. It's really complex, and I'm sure Councillor Walker knows this. So I'm absolutely sure you've got the sympathies of how hard that is to deal with. I go with what Kim said. These officers aren't trained in that space. The social services workers, they are a compliance team, and we can approach this with sympathy and empathy. And we can certainly point them to the right agencies. And I do think that we need to probably have a wee look at how we do that and the follow through. Because I think sometimes you might refer and that goes into a black hole and you never really know what action was actually taken. So again, it's very complex. I honestly don't believe our compliance officers are trained in that space. And if we wanted to have people who were in that space, we'd have to have a look at how we would have resources to do that, I think.
And maybe there's a little feedback to the committee, just an assessment somehow about how successfully we're doing the referral, or how successfully it's being received, or just to have some understanding about that. Yeah. I think would be helpful. Were there other items? I just can't quite recall the range of questions you raised.
I guess it's the impact on environment when we continue to get more and more freedom campers, and how do we resource the community if that's the case?
by reporting any increase so that we can have a accurate assessment of what's actually happening out there. I'll also speak to our contractors and probably just get more first-hand information back so that we can put a strategy in place around that.
If I may, it would be really good to capture the periods that they're there, because I wonder if this feeds into bigger conversations that we're already having around, you know, the 8-week rule and how long they can stay on an orchard if they're there to do the pit fruit season, and are they coming into Dex Reserve, for example, like I believe a few of them are, more than a few, because they can't stay on the site that they're working on. So then they go park up for the night and then go back to the place of employment, getting an understanding of, you know, from the crew that you have that walk around and do compliance around our Freedom campus, just getting an understanding of why they're there.
Through the chair, to pick up on that one, yes, certainly this is an opportunity for this particular report to come back and give you the metrics so you can see the scale of what we're actually seeing. And then there's a limited ability to do the diagnostics that go with that, with the existing funding that we've got. But one of the key mechanisms, I guess, to come back to you through is the level of service discussions and what is the level of service that's framed around this. And I know that's out for consultation at the moment, and certainly that's one of the things that Shane can do is go back and check to see whether where that's set, because that ultimately drives the funding demands and resourcing demands that go through with it. So I think there's a sort of another place we should just check to see whether actually what we're putting on offer out there for the public to consume for the service, and if it needs refining, then there's a discussion to be had around that, and it might well be something that we can come back to the council off the back of the consultation process.
In terms of Freedom camping, I think it'll be interesting to see, or not, come December with a date where actually vans have to be certified by. I'm just recalling that from some news item or something I've read. Whether there's any changes in numbers or not, or people who aren't certified and aren't going to just will carry on. And I mean, that's of interest to me around, you know, what those, when the deadline comes, just if there's we see any adjustment at all. Councillor Kinnemont, Butler, Dowler, then Alice.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. My question's already been asked by Councillor Maru and Walker.
Excellent. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just a comment before my question about Freedom camping. I swear that the same vans that were around pre-COVID are still around. I think they've been put into cold storage at airports, and they've just been bought up again by people as they come into the country. So there's some pretty ropey old vehicles out there emitting lots of fumes and stuff like that as they go over the Takega Hill. But my question actually is about the dog report, and thank you very much for that. It's my understanding that under the Dog Control Act, not sure of the actual name, dogs are not supposed to be disturbing wildlife or be a threat to native wildlife or protected native wildlife. But we're not getting any indication of the numbers of complaints that there are about dogs on beaches disturbing and chasing roosting, nesting, feeding birds, and also penguins. So, you know, we do have dogs that do actually, you know, kill penguins. And so my question is, are we getting reports from the contractors? Because I understand that a lot of this compliance work for dogs on beaches and in Golden Bay I'm talking about now is actually contracted out. Are we getting reports from them that could then flow into a report to this committee? That's firstly that, and are we getting these reports in order that they can inform the bylaw review, the dog bylaw review that's going on at the moment? It would be really good to have some more visibility around dogs on beaches complaints. I know there's not a lot of them, but I do know because I get rung about them that they do happen.
Through the chair, just to take your question, councillor, first before we hand over to Shane to answer. The regulatory managers report has a sort of a snapshot of a bunch of areas that fall under the domain of the regulatory manager, and of course you'll be aware that other reports come through in terms of compliance, in terms of dairy monitoring, in terms of wastewater management, and in terms of freshwater management. So this is the snapshot of a limb of the work that the regulatory manager has oversight. In terms of dogs, again, it's a smaller snapshot because there's a substantive requirement to produce a report. I think it's Section 10A of the Dog Act or something like that, where that comes back to the committee. So that's the full story around what we're seeing in terms of our dog management responsibilities. So more detail gets doled into that. But I'm taking your question as to whether or not, even in the snapshot, we could expand on that and open up a little bit more as to what we're seeing and hearing regards dogs and their interactions with birds in the environment. So that's the sort of context that I'll flick back to you on, Shane.
Currently, we don't track it. We have service requests that come in, so this might be something that we need to then look at to track more accurately. We look at it, each one as a individual item. So that is something that we could look at if that's what would be information wise that would be suitable for you.
Okay, and look, thank you very much for that, because this has been raised continuously, that this lack of visibility of those complaints about dogs disturbing birds on beaches, and that's very helpful to know how those complaints are being processed in our system, and it would be good if there could be some collating of that for to just expand the report a little bit. Thanks very much.
Jane.
My apologies, Madam Chair, and to the councillors. I forgot to introduce Shannon Gawley. She's the regulatory officer who deals with the stats, and I thought she may have been able to expand on the different reporting. So point taken, and we'll definitely make improvements in that space.
Thank you. Thanks, Shannon. Councillor Dowler, then Councillor Ellis.
Jane, pleased to meet you. I'm the guilty person who gave that person your name to ring. He was going to start digging to find out who you were anyway as the replacement manager, so I thought I'd just save him the time. And his words to me this morning on the phone call was, "You're a good bugger." So let's hope that relationship can continue. I hope. Couple of things. I'll comment on another institution. I laid a fire risk complaint with FENS back in November 23 about a particular house in Motueka that was really concerning me back then. About the 20th of March, I think it was, I got a letter back to say that they'd received my complaint and they'd look at investigating it. I've been driving past that house every month. Man, you can't see it for the overgrowth now. But anyway, they've got it under control. Unfortunately, I've also since found out that the homeless have broken a window or a door and shifted into the same property. So at the time I did, in my report, indicate that I'd seen people coming in and out of the place, and I felt if a fire officer was going to attend, he might want to take a policeman with him. But that was way back in November, so I don't know. Haven't heard any more. Anyway, hopefully it was going. I'd spoken to Adrian beforehand. Our guys couldn't get in because there was no health risk at that stage. The people who had complained to me about it, who didn't want to be named, that's why I did the act on their behalf. Hadn't seen any rodents or anything running around at the property at that stage, so no doubt there are now. But anyway, it's under control. My last thing is the freedom camping scenario. I have a friend that travels down the Motueka Valley each day to work and home. And the two common sites on the Mott Valley, one beside the bridge, the other one's in McLean's, she said that they're out of control. She said they are totally out of control. And she felt that we probably weren't doing our job. And I just said, well, I'd mention it when the appropriate time came. Today's the appropriate time because I can see you and talk to you. So yeah, just to pass it on to the contractor, please, just to go up and have a look, because she said the toilets will not be coping.
Thank you. Any comment to make about McLean's particularly, or just?
No, sorry, Madam
Just-
Chair,
yeah.
no comment, but I've taken that,
Yes, thank
made a
you.
note of it, and I'll address it.
Great, thank you. Councillor Ellis. Looking for someone to move as well.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to move. Hi, Shane, welcome. It's nice to have another good bugger on board. I just got a couple of very quick questions regarding in your report about the fire in Takaka, and I'm always pleased to see a debrief meeting happening after such a big event. And it's great to have all the agencies involved. I'm just curious as to how members of the public were involved to check that we're getting our messages out fast enough and appropriately, and that members of the community, so that we can learn, they best understand how well we communicate in these events. And the other question I had, which has come up from our discussions, is given the changes to the freedom camping self-containment issues, do we have capacity, because it's looking like we could possibly have more checking of vehicles involved. Do we have the capacity once that comes in our contractors to do that potential extra work? And I kind of have a side question regarding Freedom Campers too, but I think it's for our reserves department. Do we have records of damage within our reserves, and the frequency to how much damage is actually happening in these concentrated areas? But we can sort that out offline later, but it's just right with you.
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry.
And just take the one on the reserves and take that as a follow-up action to get back to you in between meetings.
Thank you. Anything further? Looking for someone to second the reports. Oh, did you
Okay, answers to the two other questions?
Sorry, thank you, Councillor. Yes, I was going to just respond back to you. How well do we communicate to the public after the fire?
No, sorry. Did we include them in the feedback in the debrief meeting to check their responses after that?
No, we only use the government agencies, Fire, WorkSafe. So no, we did not.
If I could just pick up on that one, the one thing that we did do is we went back to the community board with a full scenario and synopsis. So we had feedback on behalf of the community through that debrief.
And in terms of the fire, you have something further? No.
Apologies, I was going to go on to the next question.
Sure.
But, with regards to having sufficient staff numbers to do freedom camping, the answer is probably no. We have a massive area to cover, and MB does have a source of funding for us to engage with them, to get extra funding to employ more staff to do it, and that is something that I will be looking at this year if the funding is made available again. But with our contractors, they do parking control, dog control, and freedom camping, so they are stretched, and the numbers are few.
If I could just add to that again, it takes us back to the level of service discussion. So that's really where we're setting the expectations about what services we can provide and to what extent, because funding follows that. So at the moment, there's sufficient funding to deliver on what we're asked to do. But if there's an expanding horizon, then that's where that discussion is best anchored.
Are we there yet? Great. In terms of the Takaka fire, so I'm Golden Bay Ward councillor and was very attuned to the comms coming through to the community generally, and it seemed to me that they were very good, and it seemed to me that we were pretty quickly there, and you know, Facebook posts. I was reposting some things, clarifying questions coming in from community notice board page, responses coming. I mean, that's how I saw it. And there were some things that needed clarifying. Some people weren't quite sure about if they were in some area or not. But in the review or the debrief about it, did we arrive on something about feeling like we were pretty happy with how the comms had gone out to the community?
From council PDC side, yes.
Yeah.
We also, that was supported by the fire services with our communication that went out. I personally haven't received any complaints about lack of information from the public. The complaints that we did receive post-fire was around people concerned about their borewell water and may not have been tested. And Daniel Winter, who was our environmental team leader at the time, he reassured them and he made sure that tests were done when they were required to be done.
And I think that's one of the things that comes to the fore, is that people's own bore that they're responsible for, and they're responsible to get it tested themselves. It's people start asking, was council going to test our bores? And you know that yeah, there's sort of something gets lost in there around people are responsible. And I certainly saw the request of people to please get your bore monitored. I mean, tested. Yeah, yeah.
And just a comment to me from that. We heard the word exceptional mentioned before in relation to Shane's assessment of what his team's been doing. From a group manager perspective, the response from the environmental health team for that fire and then the water contamination was nothing short of exceptional. I got a wide range of feedback, was very gratifying in terms of where the community members who were feeding back to me were appreciative. And that includes Fonterra. Fonterra are over the moon in terms of the steps that we took to satisfy what they've got a very demanding client base. And they pointed out that something in the order of 13 of their facilities could have been impacted on if in fact they weren't able to provide the assurance that the water where they were sourcing it from was in fact safe. So the work the council did off its own initiative, I might add, because I feel the environmental health team went above and beyond the call of duty because others were standing, you know, stuck in the mud when this was happening. And they come on board subsequently. The team that led the charge was the environmental health team from the Tasman District Council. And I really feel that, that should be acknowledged from my perspective, because I saw that unfolding. I was kept fully informed, and I believe our community were kept fully informed, and our communications team were totally lined up with the messaging as it was going out on a daily basis. So I think this is just one of those things that slips through the cracks, but it is actually an example of what I think Shane was referring to when he used the word exceptional, as this is just a case study where that played out and that word is deserved.
Thank you. And interesting with the, yes, and thank you. Just with the conversation happening at the moment about NEMA, the national emergency, and how it's not till emergencies happen that then it's like, oh goodness, we're not prepared for that or this. But this is an example of something happened that was pretty serious and very good response. Yeah, fantastic. I'm going to put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you very much. We're going to have a 5-minute break for a pit stop and then come back for the Harbourmaster report and the kindergarten matter. Thank you.
Yeah, well,
I'm sorry about this disrespect that's been shown here for this very important report. It was just a 5 minutes pit stop, not a coffee break, because we've got one report on it. Over to you, Peter. Thank you. You can be rest assured that people will have thoroughly read your report and enjoyed it too, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'll take the report as read, as you said. And before I do anything, I would like to introduce Kelly. I don't think you've met before, but Kelly is my administration support in the team. So she started about 6 months ago and is a brilliant asset to us. She's a 0.5 with us and a 0.5 with Public health? Yeah, environmental health, yeah.
Okay, nice to meet you.
Just take the opportunity to introduce her. And yeah, like I said, take the report as read. I don't know if there's anything you want me to clarify on, so I'll open the floor to questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Maru has something for you, and then Councillor Walker, Councillor Kinnemont, and no doubt Councillor Mailing at some point. Thank you.
Unbelievable. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for your report. Just item 11, the Motueka Channel and the local knowledge. I guess it's a leading question. So it's a constant task of removing those markers and bits and pieces. Is there anything that you can suggest in how that may be able to be maintained better?
To the chair, yes, there is. So after I wrote this report, I think 2 weekends ago, we had quite a storm come through, and we actually, at the time of the report, there was only one that we'd had go ashore, and that storm we had 7 go ashore. So there's quite a considerable amount of work that I plan to do around making the weights heavier and the chain bigger, basically, upgrading that channel markers.
And is there, let's just say the word, is there anything in terms of your powers that can help maintain dredge / that channel so that actually there's a bit more certainty about rite of passage?
Short answer is no.
I sort of knew that. And now the last is just a comment. Really good to see Dan getting recognised in your report. So nice photo, and he's certainly well deserved it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you to you, Madam Chair. Good report. Thank you. Thank you for the amazing mahi that your team do. I guess I was privileged enough to go out on the water one day and just recently, and I guess there's parts of the area that I question how safe we are when there's certain buoys that aren't there. So I'm mindful that now that the peak of summer's gone and the seasonal buoys have been removed, wondering what it takes and whether you've got the funding to do some permitted navigational aids in certain areas. And one of the areas I'm talking about is on the end of Adele Island, where there's that big sand spit that goes out and it's no longer marked. I guess my question is, do you have enough funding to be able to put what's required to make that a permanent marker / navigational aid? That's my first question. My second one is around when I look at how many hours you do, and being a regular at the Marine Cafe part, I see the boats coming and going regularly, and mindful of how many hours your crew do over summer. And you know, there is a thing in here about fatigue, and I'm really concerned about health and safety and what it's like for you to actually get a day off, and is it a day off? And do we have enough FTEs in the long-term plan with your funding to secure your positions where you're not at risk? And my last one is around the boat and towing, and have we got funding set aside to rectify the challenge that we currently have?
I'll start sort of in reverse order, if that's okay. So we'll address the elephant in the room in terms of towing first. So I had a brief chat, even this morning before the meeting, with the fleet team, and they have consulted with an engineer to look into the issue. They're still waiting on a quote first, but they're happy to fund the report basically from an engineer to see exactly what our requirements and our needs are to best suit what we do. I have put in a request for funding through CapEx to solve the problem, but we'll see what the report comes back with and take any advice as needed. I guess in the short term, no, we don't have an answer, but we're working on it, and hopefully we should have enough funding through CapEx going forwards to solve that problem. The permanent markers, as you see in the report, we've got over 230 seasonal floats, so it's an awful lot of seasonal floats that we pull in and out every year. mainly due to how long the seasons are, and maybe the one way of looking at it, we could look at extending that time period. I'd have to look into what's required to do that. However, there are at least 3 locations like the one you're already telling us about that I would want to put a permanent marker there anyway. Putting a permanent marker in is not impossible. It is costly because we do have to go through maritime procedures to get it gazetted and put on a chart properly. And obviously it needs to be a much bigger marker because it's got to be able to handle a lot more weather for the whole year. I believe what I put in the report for the long-term plan should enable me to do a lot of this work. And also I'm planning to apply for FED funding through Maritime New Zealand for money to go towards both the Motorway Channel and permanent markers that directly affect recreational boaties. So the FED funding is not for commercial, it's only for recreational. So I do plan on applying for that funding as well. As for fatigue management, we have got 1 full-time FE role being applied for as part of their long-term plan. So there should be 3 operational staff members plus a 0.5 for Kelly in the office moving forward. And we'll just have to sort of see how that looks. I'm doing quite a lot of work around communications, I guess re-education, I suppose, as to what calls need to go through to the Harbourmaster. I think in the report I talked about 27 phone calls on one of my days off, 26 phone calls, averaging 11 phone calls a day throughout summer. A lot of the phone calls aren't relating to things I can do anything about. A lot of the phone calls are to do with maybe dock incidences with seals. So it's, hang up and call 0800 dock hot. I had quite a lot of phone calls about people fishing in the marina, catching tiny fish. So again, that's an MPI issue. I have no powers around that. So there's sort of a lot of work to do around education of what the Harbourmaster's function actually is in this region and how we support the community through that. So hopefully you'll see more things coming out in certainly Newsline in the short term, and probably in a few more places as we move forward.
Thank you. I'll sort to Ed Kim.
Yeah, just to jump in here. So I guess to follow on from the councillor's question, the idea of separating the Harbourmaster function out from the core regulatory one was to give greater visibility to what those functions actually are and how we best support them. What we're consulting on at the moment under the long-term plan, so the 10-year picture in terms of supporting that Harbourmaster role was pretty much developed by the predecessor with eyes on the way the system was being run then. Peter's had the opportunity to come in and ride the surfboard in the first few months of this as this package is out there for consultation. So he certainly has, and I'm working very closely with him personally to strengthen and make sure that the service is fit for purpose and robust. And there's 2 things that come with that. One is that we may need some existing funding, extra funding existing, but we also see some avenues for cost recovered funding that have open up that various things need to change, but we see the opportunity for transferring a lot of the cost towards those more who are benefiting from the service than across the general rate. So there's quite a few things in the pipeline. ELT are meeting after this session today to consider, while we're out there consulting, what extra demands may have come to surface through that consultation period. So councillors will be brought into that picture once the ideas that Peter has put on the table have been considered by ELT and taken through into a wider council discussion. So I think you can expect to hear a little bit more about strengthening the role of the Harbourmaster as part of those discussions.
Thank you. Councillor Kinnemont and then Councillor Dowler, looking for a mover and a seconder. Thanks.
I'll second them through the chair, Madam Chair. I've got 3 questions. Page 54, clause 4.2, Tata Beach issues. And you mentioned there about there are other resources nearby that could have been better utilised to help you retrieve the boat, or I can't remember the exact wording there. Are you forging relationships with locals who have maybe assets or boats that can help you in your, you know what I'm trying to say, are you, yeah, that's one question. I'll do one at a time.
Okay. To the chair, yeah. So the short answer is yes. I've got very good relationships with a lot of the operators over there already. I've worked for a long time on the Able Tasman coastline for Able Tasman sea shuttles, running barges and things. So I've done quite a bit with the mussel industry over there already. I could have had one of the skippers on the phone within a few minutes, and he would have told me straight away whether he could go out or not. This all happened before I started. I only read the report about this incident and was quite shocked to hear how much fuel was on board when this did sink, and there's no knowledge of what was done about the fuel or anything. So it was quite concerning for me that this issue could have been resolved without a vessel sinking.
So not only that, but I'm thinking of well, this lovely port of Mapua, Motueka and Golden Bay, West Haven, things like that. You know, you can't get Sentinel there quickly, but if you've got locals. So I'm asking not only just Golden Bay, but are you looking at within the Tasman region forging relationships?
Yes, definitely. Certainly Motueka, Mapua, Tarakohi, and along the Able Tasman coastline, I've got very strong contacts already. The inlet over on the west coast is a bit more problematic. We are working with DOC around improving that region, and one of the things I'm wanting, I guess, more funding for really is to be able to spend more time over there with, you know, accommodation budget as well to go with it, because I'd like to do more patrolling through the inlet and make those connections with the industry on that coastline. I do know quite a few fishermen who fish the west coast, so I do have some contacts, but it's definitely worth getting more. Yeah.
Sorry, hi everybody. I can add to that. We have compiled.
Sorry, can you just bring the mic right up to you? Yeah, thank you.
Sorry. We have just recently compiled a list of people in the area that have got assets and vessels available for emergency procedures. We've got available on our website. We've been, was it RCC, was it Maritime New Zealand initiative to collate that. It hadn't been updated for a long time. So now we know the areas and size of vessels and what capabilities we have with assets, places to put displaced people, that type of stuff in the Tasman area. So we're building that list. It's growing all the time. So it's something we didn't have beforehand.
So what Kelly's referring to is that RCC New Zealand obviously have the responsibility through MNZ for search and rescue response, and they've compiled a database of all vessels that are able to assist in emergencies, I guess. And the one for the top of the south was incredibly outdated. In fact, I think it even had Legato, which is the vessel prior to Sentinel, listed as the asset for this region. And that's not a mistake on us. That was on an MNZ database, nothing to do with council. So through that process of updating, we've know a lot more vessels as well.
Thank you. In terms of the Tartan Beach situation, I mean, you might be interested to read the report of that incident, and there was some strange and particular things happening in that. And it's not, you know, there could have been some easy solutions available in my view, to the skipper of that boat. Yeah, so can you get some background understanding about what that means? I think a couple of phone calls and could have been quite a different outcome. And just to acknowledge, actually, the locals that live at Tartan Beach spent a lot of time cleaning up that vessel off the beach. And Adrian was in touch with me as it was, just as soon as it happened, it advised me what was happening on the beach, and keeping a very close eye on the matter about the diesel, whether it was spilling or not. So, yeah, you had something extra.
Through you, Madam Chair, 2 more questions, quick ones. The additional FTE support for the long-term plan, like Councillor Walker there, I would fully support anything like that. When it comes to people's health and safety and their mental well-being, the more support you need, I'll help you if I can. And the last question, it's not more a request, it's more a comment. Page 58, clause 9.2. The Deputy Harbourmaster is setting up a youth sailing training scheme. This is brilliant. This is good news, and I fully support the Deputy Harbourmaster and your team if you're starting to do this. And how can I help? Maybe I can pull a sail up or something like that. We'll shout. But yeah, that is a good news story for us. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Dowler.
Thanks for the report, Peter. Right, number one is item number 16, the mooring bylaw. Councillor Marling might be interested in that as well. We both sat on the hearing panel, and I'm quite surprised to see that it hasn't come to a conclusion yet. So, yeah, it concerns me a bit that we put a lot of effort into that and did whatever, and it just doesn't seem to progress. Not your problem, but obviously something's gone wrong. That's my comment. And whether there's an answer to that, don't worry about it here if it doesn't matter. But my second one is the Sentinel. My previous life being a Minister of Transport officer, I would have total concerns. Two reasons. The way the boat's set up is the way the boat's set up. Running a private warrant station and mop as well, large boats like that normally came through with 3 axles underneath them just to get the tyre capacity to carry the load. You look at the tyre size, it tells you on the side of the tyre what the vehicle's capable of doing. You put on the weighbridge with those 2 fat big engines on the back. I imagine those tyres are going to be stretched to the limit. The other end would be the same. The whole story was that if you can't pick the trailer up and put it on the drawbar by lifting it yourself, you're actually probably exceeding the downward force of the drawbar on the vehicle in front. Any certified tow bar on any car that you see round will have a maximum vertical loading on it, normally 40 to 60 kgs downforce, which a normal person can pick up and put on. If you've got to use the wheel, you're probably just about overloading your vehicle. This is a ute with a chassis, so it will have a higher loading, but I would be concerned that the distance forward. Anyway, that's just my comment on that one. So yes, it needs to be addressed as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded, your report, by Councillor Walker and Councillor Kinnemont. I think the way that you and your team do connect out into the communities, all the events you attend, and the links that you have is very good. It's fantastic. So I want to acknowledge that, and that takes effort. That's relationship building and with whoever you're having to deal with, and that's a certain skill set, I think, along with the intent. So very good report, thank you. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried, thank you. And we move to Robert, the Wakefield Local Purpose Reserve, lease to the kindergarten out there in the fine town of Wakefield. Oh, Councillor Mackenzie. Oh, shoot.
It's a handicap. It's a handicap race. You get away.
The report will have been read thoroughly by everybody here, but if there's any just key points you'd like to emphasise, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is, I expect to be a relatively easy and non-controversial concept. The two issues, we've got a scout building that hasn't been used for quite some time. There's been some changes within Scouting New Zealand, and I think there's a bit more pragmatism available with these buildings which aren't being used and aren't being maintained. We've now got what I think is a pretty good model for what we're doing in Wakefield, albeit it's been frustrating. I'm sure, particularly for the local ward council, is it how long it's taken, but we have got there. Certainly, I think this is a really good concept, and that the new organisation should have the ability to improve and maintain this building. As I was drafting the report, I thought probably the only thing that I needed to make you aware of is that there's no formal requirement within the Reserves Act to undertake public notice I think, within in liaising with the democracy team, they thought there are probably certainly implied obligations under the Local Government Act. So my recommendation is that we go to a point where we ask for public input at the concept of granting a lease for what is quite a long time, up to 25 years. But I did want to make councillors aware that if they felt confident that there was enough information available to them just from their work within the community, that it's not mandatory. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Robert. Councillor McKenzie.
Yeah, thank you very much, through the chair, Robert, for getting the work to this stage. I think that you've landed on the right recommendation, because whilst the report does say that it's reasonably widely known within the community, I'm not sure that is the case, actually, based on my reading of the situation. I mean, I think people will generally be supportive, but in the interests of being open and transparent with the community, I do support where you've actually landed with your recommendation on it. I guess I would just ask, though, that we try to get that bit done as quickly and as efficiently as we possibly can, and happy to chat with you about how you would go about that. But I'm happy to move the recommendations as they are up on the board. Thank you.
No, thank you. Anybody else? Second, then we can classic.
Councillor running with his mic off.
Any other comments or questions? It seems like a good idea and straightforward, and I understand Councillor Shellcrass has been involved. Is it correct? In the process to some degree. Yes, I'm getting nodding from down the back too.
Sorry, nodding is not much use, is it? We're recording a meeting.
Yeah. Well, it's just, I'm not.
Certainly, I've been asked within, other meetings about it, and I think Councillor Shellcrest has been talking with my manager Nick Chin, as opposed to directly with me. So I'm getting that information third hand. But having talked to Craig at Nelson Marlborough kindergartens, there's, they've got a waiting list of 100, as is mentioned in it's
yes. And there'll be a few scout halls around the district, I think, that you will be looking for use, perhaps. Councillor Kinnemont.
Through you, Madam Chair. So this opens up the possibility of the kindergarten losing access to this scout hall because someone else comes along and also wants to use it. How would you deal with two prospective tenants in there?
So the reality is that the building has been sold by the Scouts to Nelson Marlborough Kindergarten. If another group came along and said, well, we have a greater need, that's something that would come back to the committee. But it's difficult to know what the likelihood of that is. As I understand it, there's a community centre proposed for Wakefield at some stage. So it's always a difficult scenario if you have two community groups saying we have a greater need. I mean, what we would try and do is say, well, can you work together? That was one of the things that Scouts were encouraged to do if they had a future need, is they tend to meet after a kindergarten's closed down. Sorry.
I mean, the leases for the reserve, which is our business. The hall's owned by the Scouts, so selling at the kindergarten. It's not quite a scenario where we're putting out something, hey, who wants to use this? So, yes.
If I may, I've been teasing things out here a wee bit. So we're going to the public about putting a ground lease out for a kindergarten facility. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Wow, we seem so hamstrung by bureaucracy. That's all it is. We've already got a building that's been leased. We're just talking about a lease. And we have to go out, we're looking at going out to the community to say, is this all right? I think, tell me that I'm wrong, please.
I like your optimism, Councillor Kinderford.
Just something pretty
Yeah.
basic in response. I think it's a fairly basic thing we do in terms of reserves, leases. We've got loads of them. This isn't unusual.
To be fair, part of what I talked to Craig, sorry to interrupt, part of what I talked to Craig at Nelson Malbrookindi, because he was expressing pretty much the same views. And I said, my feeling was we run a bigger risk by not consulting the community than we do by consulting the community and coming to an outcome. We run the theoretical risk of judicial review, you know. It is what it is.
Yeah, I think having anyway, it's a new use, isn't it? And I think having if some scouts come along once or twice a week, I don't know how many, a few people, changing the use into a kindergarten, extra traffic, all of that, I think it's reasonable myself that people get let know about it. And how about that? It's been moved by Councillor Mackenzie and seconded by Councillor Mailing, who's in a hurry to trot out of here and yes, you are backing with me. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you, and good luck with the consultation process. I'll close with karakia. Thank you both, and then just make a couple of notes about the next events this afternoon. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Elaine, on the flight deck. Karakia tātou. Kia hiki te kōrero, kia wātia, kia mama te manawa o te tangata. Kia u, kia te ara mō tātou e oro nei, ko rongo, ki runga, kia tina, hui e. Kia everybody. So your creek check is a 1:30 start, that visit. And then 3 of us have got